Welcome to MLVNG Sound. This is the Open Eye Podcast. I am your host and narrator, westthefree. I'm going to jump into this recording and get started with season number 1, Being a Man. This is episode number 1, and today the main topic is about the awakening of your eyes. Now, when I say eyes, I don't mean the ones in the sockets at the front of your face. I mean your true eyes, the ones that allow you to anticipate things before they happen, the ones that allow you to see opportunity and capitalize on it for those of you who are entrepreneurial, the ones that allow you to differentiate between who might be a good partner versus who might be toxic for you. The ones that have kept you alive up until now, and you probably have not been aware of them. Like any other animal that was created by nature, we were given certain gifts and talents. Ours may not be as vicious as the lion in the savannah or the tiger in the snow, but they're more cunning in the sense that we play the long game. As humans, we're good at that. We're not so short-sighted and nearsighted that we have to rely on a set of phenotypical traits or adaptive characteristics that make us at the top of the food chain. The thing that really sets us apart is that piece of gray matter that we call our brain. And within that brain lies the eye. Some people call it the third eye, and I'd be inclined to agree with them, but the point of this podcast is not to get mystical and spiritual. It's to be as pragmatic as possible. And for a man, becoming a man, as season 1 suggests, being a man, it's somewhat of a burden, and it's a burden that we're called to carry. We need to carry, and you only learn how to do this by way of example. But at a certain point, this example has to be abandoned because the example is only training. Every master or every teacher, his dream is that one day his student may be able to surpass him. And if this reigns true for our fathers, their dreams were that we could become better than them, because any great man is self-loathing to a certain degree, and you've made enough mistakes in your life to wish that your offspring are able to sidestep the very things that undercut your performance and did not allow you to fully tap into your potential. So if our forefathers were to look back on us in this generation right now, and they were to summarize what they thought of us, personally, I would say that the years preceding me being here in this studio right now recording this podcast, many of them are subpar as to the mental faculties I've been gifted with, my physical capacity to endure and work hard, my tenacity, my focus. And the reason that is, fundamentally, is that my eyes have not been open. My eyes have not been aware of the truth, the reality of things. And what is the reality of the world we live in as men? What is the reality of the world we live in as beings that need to actualize their own potential and who need to transcend themselves? Well, the reality is this: your time is limited. And if you were aware of how quickly your name and your legacy is forgotten, you wouldn't care so much about everything that's going on, and you would focus on using the time and resources that have been allotted to you to actualize your potential. If you're a fan of the resurgence of Stoicism, then you will not get caught up in the hype of everybody who wishes to don the mantle of Stoic without truly understanding the fundamental teachings of someone like Epictetus, when he says that if you truly wish to take on philosophy, if you truly wish to don the mantle of the thinking man, the man who is aware of everything that is around him and who is aware of his position in the universe, then you must be prepared to take the worst of it in every lot. You must be prepared to be ridiculed by your friends. You must be prepared to be outcast and rejected purely because you're now going to be going on the substance of your mind. You're going to be going on the voice that is your inner demon, and you're going to be going onto the conviction of the dreams that you have been given. And this is hard because for many of us, it means flying in the face of what our parents want us to do. It means flying in the face of what our spouses and girlfriends want us to do. It means alienating ourselves from the group and finding ourselves on very uncomfortable and unfamiliar territory. But being able to open your eyes is dangerous, and I believe this is why up until this point, many of us have decided to keep our eyes closed. It's because when you open your eyes, you see the reality of the world around you for what it really is. It is not as glamorous and it's not as beautiful as you thought it was. That guy that you've been friends with for the longest while, since perhaps pre-primary, you realize that every time you've lent him money, he hasn't bothered to pay you back. Or even though you've been there for him, he hasn't really been there for you when you needed him. Or you realize that that love of yours that you thought is everything, if you were to analyze the truth of the relationship that you have, it's really more transactional than anything else. It's more, what have you done for me lately, than, hey, I miss you. And this is not the reality in all cases, but we live in a generation that is so comfortable that to a certain degree, you'll notice that we tend to create our own emergencies and anxieties, almost as if we want to give meaning to our lives by creating a chaos, be it drama, be it unnecessary bickering and fighting, being irrational, feeding our egos with unnecessary toys and trinkets, and trying to amass wealth as if we're going to hold on to it forever. You realize that the mortality of who we are is something we do not want to face. And that is what opening your eyes requires you to do. Opening your eyes, it's contemplating the meaning of your life when you contrast it against your inevitable death. You sit there and you ask yourself, in a decade after I take my last breath, in a century after I take my last breath, 1 millennia from now, what will it matter? What will it matter if I am the most celebrated man of my generation? Or what will it matter if I die as a vagabond? It's almost, well, it actually is very nihilistic to think like that. But when you get lost in that rabbit hole of nihilism, then you might find meaninglessness in this entire universe and the cosmic array of things that lay before you. For some of us, we choose to think that we're just atoms in the void, and others find meaning in spirituality. Well, I'm here to propose that there might be an alternative that's much healthier to either one of them. It's opening your eyes and understanding that this is very, very liberating. We have a set of rule books that have been written by people who were no more knowledgeable than us, who are just as confused. And we discovered fundamental laws of our universe, and Newton and the Einsteins of our generations are able to capitalize on the fundamental governing principles of nature and build technologies that just blow our minds. But at the end of the day, these are the very same fundamental laws and principles that have been since the beginning of time. We've just found a way to work around our environment. And this is the gift of opening your eyes. When you open your eyes, as Nikola Tesla did, you free yourself from the anxiety, the fear, the worry, and the stress that comes with opening your eyes to the reality of the truth. It's a chicken and egg situation. Opening your eyes breeds the anxiety, fear, and worry and stress, but opening your eyes also frees you of that. And how does it do that? It does that in one fundamental truth. You are the pen. You're not the piece of paper. Up until this point, perhaps you've been shaking your fist at the sky, blaming the old man up there with his gray beard for your misfortune or for things not going your way. But I ask you, your favorite stories, the ones you really love. Take Batman, for example. Why do we admire him so much? You really have to think about that. When you look at his life with the indifference that comes as being an audience when you're watching a character that's there to entertain you, you don't want a story that goes, young billionaire boy is born into opulent family, raised, goes to the best schools, achieves the highest academic mark, becomes the next CEO of his father's company, and lives a happy life with the most beautiful model that you can imagine from Gotham City, and dies a peaceful old life. No one wants to hear that story. It's boring. But when you consider that his parents were murdered in an alleyway, and instead of getting lost in cocaine and hookers and allowing the billions and billions of fortune that were left to him, he traveled, he trained his mind, he trained his body. He was able to become a symbol, and he was able to serve his people. And when you think of that kind of story, that suffering is what is able to put the necessary pressure, the requisite pressure on the substance that is the man, which has not been actualized yet, and is forced to make a decision. What do I become now? In that moment, it's really the same water that hardens the egg, softens the potato. You have to sit there when your eyes are open to the reality of it. My parents have just been murdered in an alleyway. That was Bruce Wayne's reality. Your reality may be different. You may be facing an addiction. You may be facing a nasty breakup. You may have just lost your job. You may have a crazy injury that you don't know how you're going to recover from. You may be even diagnosed with a terminal illness. That means you have 6 months left to live. But really, what is 6 months in the face of 6 decades? The never-ending marching of time is indifferent to how much time we all have. So one man is laughing at another man because, well, you have 6 months and I have 6 decades. But really, in the infinite chasm of time before and after us, what does that all mean? The choice is yours. In that moment, you have to define what your life means for you. And there you are. Your eyes are open. The suffering has placed you here. And now you need to make a decision. Am I going to break, or am I going to allow myself to be actualized? And then you face the other side of having your eyes open. The relaxation, the faith, the calm, and the peace that comes with knowing that this too shall pass. No matter the highest ecstasy you may be experiencing or the lowest low, your perception of it is all that matters. Now you see no fear. Now you see the way ahead of you. The way is action. The way is that this tool that you've been given, as I had mentioned earlier, this gray matter, this brain of yours, is so powerful that it gets in your way. It's a tool. And like any tool, if you don't use it, well, it becomes useless. You can have the fastest car, but if you don't know how to drive, well, what's the point? You can have the most amazing software, but if you've never taken the time to practice and learn the different elements of it, you won't be able to produce anything. A few years ago, when I was in engineering school and I got introduced to AutoCAD and all the different things I could do, I used to spend hours and hours and hours just playing with the software because it was amazing. It was like this little virtual world that had been introduced to me, and I could make anything, and I could test its parameters, and I could apply different forces to it. It was just absolutely beautiful. It was this technology that introduced me to a new dimension. And it's the same reason I fell in love with Grand Theft Auto. I felt like I was somebody who was just dropped into a world with no rules, no reservations. I could do whatever I wanted. Granted that there were certain parameters I could not overcome, but it was liberating. I had this character at my hands that I could do anything with. But then when it comes to my own life, even though those same rules that apply to Grand Theft Auto apply even more to me, I'm afraid somehow, because I've ascribed my meaning to this title. I've ascribed my meaning to this face, this reputation, this name that I didn't even give myself. It was given to me before I was even conscious that I was a being. And now I have to live this repetitive treadmill of a function that's been assigned to me by people who are not really malicious. They were not having any ill intent. These were my parents. But this is the very same system I find myself in that they find themselves in. And at some point, you have to break the mold and open your eyes. And when you do, you understand that the liberating factor of being a man is you have choice. The problem with choice is it's hard. The problem with choice is I have billions in inheritance. I can live a hedonistic life, or I can go and train myself and become a symbol. One of my favorite icons is Nelson Mandela. I like to make a joke about it and say he's probably one of the most chill people in the world because he understood the true meaning of life. You spend decades locked up, being mistreated, tortured, beaten. And then, even then, in that moment, you choose not let it get to you. I don't know the exact truth of the story. A friend of mine told it to me, but at some point the guards on Robben Island just stopped trying to torture Nelson Mandela because, they would do all their tortures on him for the day, and then at the end of the day, after being subjected to grueling levels of torture, he would come out with a smile, thank them, and say, well, I'll see you tomorrow again. Now, you do that to a man 1 day, 5 days, 10 days, 20 days. Eventually, as the guard, you're going to break because you're going to realize this man has made a decision that no matter what happens, he is going to live his life. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be an amazing life like Elon Musk where you can have billions of dollars and you can have whatever you want. Your life may end as a very simple individual who at best might only be remembered by a handful of people. But that is still your life. The essence of Stoicism for me, what it was, is the essence of what it means to be a man. It's to look at the ceaseless marching of time and say, in light of all the anxiety and fear and worry that is before me, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to decide what I want to do, and I'm going to do that. And that's a hard choice because at the end of the day, you're going to face challenges that are deeper than any nightmare you could have had, because within the mind of a man is where fiction is born. And I always thought that truth is stranger than fiction because fiction is limited by what our imagination believes to be possible. But reality, it's not limited by the bounds of our imaginations. Reality does some pretty hectic stuff, like a meteorite hitting the globe and wiping out an entire race of people. The universe has a capacity to do this, and it will keep marching on, indifferent to the fact that an entire race of human beings has just been wiped out. This is one of our deepest fears. But once you realize this, it's both frightening and soothing to know that in the face of all of these things that are going on, you can choose and you can take control of your life. You don't have to be jealous of anyone. You don't have to be angry towards anyone. You don't have to be resentful. You don't have to be so full of all these emotions, whatever they may be, for whatever reason, justified or not. The fact that the universe has not come up to you and said, hey, I'm sorry for doing this to you, means that this is not a sermon for me saying that, hey, there was meaning to that. God did that for a purpose. No, I'm saying it happened. That's it. It happened. Now you can live the rest of your life looking at that thing, whether it happened to you or you did it to yourself, whether it's something that could have been avoided or it's something that was out of your control. Here you are right now. You cannot be anywhere else. And you have to choose what you're going to do with the remainder of your time. 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, 6 decades. Does it really matter? It will end. This would be a very different dialogue if we were immortal beings, but unfortunately we're not. We have family, we have careers, we love sport, we want adventure, we have academia, we have peer groups, we have an economy. We have all of these things, but a dying man on his deathbed, when he looks back at all these things, whether he's lived a complacent life or whether he's lived a hard life, whether he's served 25 to life in jail, it all becomes memories. And when you open your eyes, you realize that that's all you really have, is the witness of yourself living your life. The point of this podcast over the next few weeks and months is to outline the fact that as a man, you can't have it all, but you can have the things you truly want. They are few. They are not as much as this consumer lifestyle has been sold to you. And they're not even the things you thought you wanted. A lot of the things you're going to chase after, once you get them, you're going to realize they're empty and vain. Yes, they serve their purpose within a certain time frame, but at the end of the day, you're going to be that same man who decided to climb the pyramid because you thought all your answers were going to be there. No, all your answers are inside of you. You are the one who's witnessing this live. As the famous saying goes, wherever you go, there you are. Get out of your head. See the world for what it truly is. Allow yourself to become a man, a true man, man's man. The kind of man who does not apologize for his actions, but understands that his actions can hurt other people, and therefore you never do things to hurt other people. You do things to live your life. And if people are offended, so what? You take the kind of risks that have the potential to wipe you out, but you understand that even if you are wiped out, you will be just fine. You live your life as the kind of man who can abstain at a moment's notice, but at the same time, you can enjoy things to the absolute fullest without allowing them to corrupt your substance. The kind of man who can enjoy silence, but at the same time have a debate on topics he's not even knowledgeable about. Not to take yourself so seriously. Learn to laugh. Learn to enjoy life. I hope that this journey we're going to take together is going to be as fruitful for you as it has been for me. I've taken this journey by myself for a long time, and at this point I feel that the birth of this podcast, the birth of these series, the birth of these audios, it comes from a deep yearning within my soul to connect to other men in a generation across a sea of information who feel lost, quite frankly. And feeling lost, that's okay, that's fine. But not being able to take action because you've allowed your brain to get in the way. In my eyes, that is a sin. That is a waste of a story that you've been given to write. And you are the pen. I don't want to make your circumstance sound idle or little or small or whatever other adjectives I can find to describe it. Really, what I want to say is that what makes a man is choosing not to be a victim, even when you have every justifiable right to turn to that and say, look at the wrong that's been done to me. I have a reason to just become indifferent to it all, to become nihilistic to it all. What does that do for you? It just leaves you with bitter memories of what could have been. You want to be the kind of man who, even if you were faced with death tomorrow and you had 12 hours left, you'd make the best of that, because that is your time. The currency of a man is time, and the only way you can spend that currency is choices. And those choices come in the form of actions, not these brain farts of commitment to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take this diet, and I'm finally going to become fit, I'm finally going to finish that course, I'm finally going to ask that girl out, whatever the heck it is. None of those things matter. In the face of it all, what have you done for yourself lately?